And then let's say they're in a really high stress career and they finally make a decision and they're like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm going to make a pivot. They go to something they're more satisfied with and they drop 10 pounds like that.
Wits and Weights community, welcome to another episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. Today I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Allie Cass, and she's a former bodybuilding pro turned functional health and fitness coach who helps stressed out women optimize their metabolism, up-level their mindset, and shift from surviving to thriving. Allie will share her unique perspectives on health and fitness, the importance of the mind-body connection in overcoming health challenges, and how to up-level your mindset to achieve your goals. You'll learn about the Fat-Loss Conundrum, where hormones, gut health, and stress intersect, and practical strategies for optimizing these. We will explore topics like body positivity, self-improvement, and self-love. Allie's the founder of Allie Cass Health and the Metabolic Makeover, an online immersion program that teaches women how to reclaim their health, heal their metabolism, ditch self-sabotage, and create a life of strength and vitality. She's an advocate for self-love, becoming your best self through mind-body health, and living a life fully alive. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a fire introduction. I think you wrote that better than I would have written that myself.
That's what we try to do here, bring the fire, and I know you will as well. So I'm really excited. Thank you for coming on. And I have to just say this, everybody. Like we both had a little mix up in our appointment time here, and we were able to pull it together and jump on. And now we're recording the show, so it's gonna be fun. Okay, so what was the turning point for you? You could tell me your whole story, but I really want to understand the turning point in your life when you transitioned from being a professional bikini fitness competitor, right, to, as you call it, a health and fitness fanatic and a business owner.
Yes. So I will say there were two big turning points for me. The first was technically prior to becoming a bodybuilding competitor and then professional. And that was right after I graduated college. My mother was diagnosed with stage 3 brain cancer. I'd been an athlete my entire life. So I wasn't competing in bodybuilding, but I was always competing in some sort of sport in some shape or form. Movement was always very important to me, but that was when I realized a couple of things in my life. I realized that no one taught me how to nourish my body. Nobody taught me about nutrition, health, stress management, sleep, recovery. It was all about training for that competition. And I saw myself being the unhealthiest that I had ever been, simultaneously watching my mom get sick and going through that journey with her. I also realized through that process a lot of the flaws that we have in our Western medical system and how the system that we live in is really a system to treat sick people, not help people be their healthiest. So she was really my catalyst. My mom getting cancer, she passed away 9 months after her initial diagnosis. And that was really the catalyst of me getting into this industry, doing it for myself, but also doing it with the intention of helping other women, because I started asking questions like, what makes someone truly healthy? What is the role that nutrition, environmental toxins, stress, thoughts, beliefs, like where do these all intersect and how does that interplay to either make somebody a healthier version of themselves or to make them sick? And it really was actually a way for me to cope with that loss. And I didn't know it at the time. So fast forward a couple of months, I found myself in a place where I was the heaviest I'd ever been. I was 22 years old and I felt like SHIT. I was tired. I didn't like the way that I was showing up in the world and I didn't feel like myself. I hired a health and fitness coach and I really just wanted someone to help me get back on track and just give me a goal to work towards. So the athlete in me was like, I'm not working toward anything. I don't know what I'm doing. And she was like, why don't you compete in bodybuilding? And I was like, why don't you recommend something that doesn't sound as terrible as that? But she quickly convinced me to do it. It became a wonderful thing for me at that point in my life and at that point in my journey. However, about a year and a half into bodybuilding, I had that kind of second pivot point where I realized, okay, I went from one end to the spectrum. Now I'm totally on the other. Like my day revolves around when I'm going to eat, what food do I have access to, when am I going to work out? And it served its point for part of my life. And then I was like, wow, this is controlling my life. I now have body dysmorphia. I don't have an eating disorder, but I have disordered eating habits and patterns and views around food. And so I really went, like many women, I was like either at 0 or I was at 100. And so once I made it over to 100, I was like, this doesn't really feel very healthy either. And even though I look amazing, I still feel like I don't quite feel my best. So that was that turning point where I was like, okay, I need to get out of this competitive space and I need to focus on from a functional perspective. Again, going back to the root of health, what does that really look like for me? What areas are not optimized? And how can I fix those so I can show up as a better version of myself to help other people? And so it was that initial, having that tragedy, going through that really got me into this space. And then it was realizing that I had gone from one unhealthy end of the spectrum all the way to the other, where I was like, whoa, okay, this isn't it either. And that kind of caused me to take a little bit of a pivot. And I will say I'm not quite as lean or ripped as I was when I was a competitor, but I feel the best I've ever felt in my body, both physically and mentally. And it's such a great place to be.
Oh, that's such a great story. I mean, talking about the extremes like that, there are people who look at fitness influencers and they look at an ideal and think, wouldn't it be great to be there? And it sounds like you've had the personal experience, at least, of going from the spectrum of, okay, there's a lack of health, right? There's sickness, there's maybe doing things that sabotage your health and so on, to I want to look great and have this aesthetic goal and this very specific extreme ideal. And you did that, it sounds like, and learn from it. Are you, do you have any regrets of going through that? Or are you happy you went through that because it taught you those extremes?
Absolutely. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for the experience. And like I said, at the time, it was also a way for me to process my grief and process the anger that I had
Mm,
around losing my mom in a more healthy, productive way, as opposed
yes.
to, going out and binge drinking and then reaping the cons of that. And so it did serve its purpose for a lot of different reasons. It opened me up to the world that I'm now in. If I hadn't met my coach and mentor in that process, I actually ended up buying her business. I've rebranded. So it's been a whole evolution. And so I'm a big believer that at any given point in time, we're right where we're meant to be, even if it doesn't
Yep.
feel or look the way that we want it to. And so I'm very grateful for the journey. And I've oftentimes thought about, what if I just went back and did one more show?
Mhm.
And I don't know that I ever will, but I am grateful for what I've learned in the process.
I know what you mean there. I didn't get into lifting till I was around 40, and I've never been like through a proper like shred phase, of getting totally cut. I had Cody McBroom on my show not long ago. His show's
Awesome.
coming out, and toward the end, he's like, "Hey, if you ever want to get shredded, reach out to me." I'm like, do I want to do that? Because I've heard from bodybuilders what that can cause. But like you said, there's value in all of these, and some of the behaviors you had to apply for even the extremes of that. I imagine you still use some of those to a certain level, like maybe tracking food or at least being aware of things that you can help clients get through. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Absolutely. And tracking food's a really great example because it's something I
Mhm.
was having this conversation this morning with a client. It's not something I do all the time, but it is something that I will bring myself through periods of doing that because I think that I know where I'm at, but sometimes it is really beneficial to get that accurate picture of exactly what's going on because sometimes we self-report and we're not that accurate with what
Mhm.
we're really doing. So I think that everything that I learned in bodybuilding, and this could be the case with anything that you learn in life, can be used as a tool in the right circumstance with the right intention. And so for me, it's all about the intention, right? Like, am I doing this because I feel like I need to get shredded because it's going to make me look and feel a way that my ego is going to make me happy? Am I feeling unworthy of something and I feel that I need to do this? Or is it purely because I really want that accurate data? I want to have a good picture of where I'm at so I can make data informed decisions about what I should do next.
Yeah, you put it great. Best when you said the tool is, um, well, it's agnostic, right? You need it for a circumstance and an intention. And I do agree with that because I was actually just recording a solo episode about when to lose fat or build muscle or whatever under different scenarios, and talk about food tracking. How if you have the intuition, you may not need it at all, and you may even not need it if you've never done it before. But there's value in it to going through it at least for a time. And
Right.
so even limiting these extremes for a tad, just especially with guidance of a coach, can be enlightening, right? If nothing else. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So, I mean, you're a big advocate for self love, living a life fully alive. I love that language. It's very positive, very optimistic, and even self centered in the right way, if I can put it that way,
Mhm.
because we often neglect ourselves for years. That's right. So how do you define these concepts? Like what are, and then practically, how can we cultivate these?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the topic of self love because it's one of those that has gained so much traction on Instagram and social media. But I think people explore it a lot of times in a not so constructive way. So I feel like you have people on one side of the spectrum who are just, it's go, 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 it's self improvement all the time. It's never good enough. And then you have people on the other side that are like, love yourself and it's all magic and rainbows and you're perfect the way that you are. And I think that mindset can breed complacency. So, what I oftentimes tell clients is, in my opinion, self love is doing the things necessary to get you to where you want to be in life. Now, again, what's the intention behind that, where you want to be in life? Are we doing it because it's genuinely going to make
Mm.
us a better person? Is it going to make our life better? Is it going to give us the tools that we can, have a more positive impact in the world? Or is it coming from a place of, I feel unworthy, I feel lack, all of that? So when I work with clients, we dive into those things. But I think that self-love sometimes is doing the hard things, right? It's actually having the discipline to show up and do what I need to do to help me reach that next level of what it is that I truly desire. I don't think that self love is going to get your nails done or going to get a
Mm.
massage. Like, those are all great things if that's what you're
It's
into.
self-care, right?
Exactly, exactly. So I think there's a lot of noise on social media, and I think people
Sure.
get confused, because it's like, it's you're a parent, right? You have kids.
Mhm.
Sometimes what you have to do for your kids to show them that you love them is not the thing that they want you to do in that moment. So sometimes we need to do that same thing with ourselves because we do love ourselves and we do want to get better. So I think that when you can look at those things a little more objectively, you can say, like, wow, maybe going to the gym today or maybe making a better choice with my nutrition or whatever XYZ is actually a form of self-love and not a form of discipline, or not discipline, but restriction or something like that. And so that's where I try to help clients reframe their mindset around what is this self-love topic, because I think that self-love and self-improvement are not mutually exclusive, but oftentimes in the industry when we talk about them, it seems as though they are. I think they're one and the same personally.
For sure. That's where we can get into things like body positivity and accepting yourself versus, accepting the person you are and then striving for more because you love that person, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And that self-acceptance, I think what you said is literally the key, right? It's not about like, let's just fake pretend that we love ourselves right now, right? But it's like, I accept myself just as I accept you, just as I accept everyone else in the world. Can we all do better? Sure. Let's go do it. But you have to have that acceptance first at a healthy level before you can make yourself better and have it come from a positive place of intention.
So when you've seen people struggle with that or come in with, I've had clients who are just, it's very, very difficult for them to get over themselves, as one way to put it, or even they're just in a routine from years and years of self-sabotage of like, I can't, I didn't, making excuses and so on. How do you deal with that, the real extremes of that, and getting them shifted toward this positive mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I said it was easy. Some clients, it's certainly easier than others. But for me, it's all about bringing that awareness first. I think for a lot of those people who have been living in that mindset or in that place for a long time, that's just the narrative. That's their norm. They don't even
Mm.
realize that that's kind of the place that they live in. And so bringing to attention the verbiage that they use to talk about themselves or to talk about how they interact with the world, asking questions, why do you believe this? Or where does this stem from? Is this your belief or did you pick this up from someone? And so when I'm coaching people, I try to have this come up as an organic thing because I think
Sure.
that people also have to be ready to explore those areas. But I just start poking little holes and keep going and asking
Mhm, mhm.
questions. And I even had a client the other day who she said something, we were in a dialogue and she said something about like, I know I can't have this or something along those lines. And I was like, okay, let's reframe that verbiage, because the reality is no one's telling you you can't. You're just adopting that belief because of what you've been told. And so we talked about it. I offered a different perspective and she's like, wow, that makes total sense. Thank you for interjecting on that. And so I find that like when you have a really good relationship between client and coach, which is a big deal for me when I work with people, you can foster, that connection and start using that to shed some light for people. Now, sometimes it's a lot harder. I have sent clients to therapy before, it
Mm.
just as a recommendation. Like if I can tell that something is stemming from let's say a childhood trauma or something that's really deep that I'm, it's a little bit outside of my scope, I will make that recommendation. I explain to them how that's affecting not just their mindset, but their physiology and how they're showing up now. And so, it kind of depends on the person, but I'm a big proponent of unpacking those things, whether it's with
Mhm.
me, whether it's with another professional, because I do see the impact that it has on their health, on their wellness, and how they show up.
And you know what's great about coaching? Because you talked about the personal experience. I was thinking of that Netflix documentary called Stutz with Jonah Hill. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I haven't, but I need to.
You should watch it. It's one of those things where the hook isn't that great and it doesn't look that interesting. And then you watch it, like, this blows your mind, especially as a coach, because as a psychotherapist, this particular man who works with him believes a lot in using tools to help people move forward rather than focusing so much on the past
Mm,
and like sitting in all this trauma. And of course, we're not shrinks, but because someone's coming to you with the intent of taking a step forward and improving themselves, they're already in that mindset of, I want to do something to move here. It's not just talking to someone necessarily. And so
exactly.
you just talked about how, like, having a coach like you get deep with them can uncover things, even if you're not a psychotherapist, for the intent of using a tool to move forward. So
Mhm.
it's a good distinction to make, and why having support is very helpful, because even our own family members who love us don't necessarily have the awareness or the ability to provide that exact same type of support.
Exactly. And sometimes, at least in my experience, it's hard to get certain feedback from your partner, from people that are in your family or people that you're close with, especially when we're, starting to really dig into like things at a deep emotional level. And so sometimes it's nice to have somebody who cares about you, but is a little bit more of a third party.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. So we're getting into mindset stuff here, and I did want to explore that, because so many conversations I have with coaches, and even my own experience with clients, it's 99% up here, right?
Yeah,
It
100%.
really is. And there is a connection, and you're talking, there's physiological connections, there's emotional connections, neurological, and so on. You wrote, quote, I don't know if this was on your website, but I found it somewhere. Quote, we can literally die at any moment. And while that is a terrifying thought for some, it's what gives us the drive to make the most out of each and every day, which is what I help women do through mind body transformation. And like, for me, that connection, that mind body connection, is powerful because one tends to unleash the other and create this perfect storm. It elevates the whole person, physically and mentally. Share an example, now that we're getting to mindset, of how you've seen that connection play a role in overcoming any health challenge.
Yeah, I'll speak with my own experience. About 4 years ago, I found myself again kind of in this place where I wasn't sick per se. I had some gut
Mm,
issues. I had some other things, low level challenges that I was working on. I didn't feel my best. I was working out, so I felt like my exercise was pretty on point. My nutrition
mhm,
maybe could have done a little bit better, but again, pretty on point. Was definitely not a newbie at that point in time. Supplementation felt like that was on point. And I just felt energetically low a lot of the time.
mm,
Like I felt heavy. I felt like I was carrying around a lot of baggage. I couldn't quite figure it out. And when I sat down and I really dissected that, I realized that I had a lot of grief from losing my mom. Also underwent another traumatic death when I was in high school. And so I realized that a lot of the things that I thought that I had addressed, I had not really addressed. I just pushed down and was like, I'm strong, I can deal with it. And so it was that factor. And then on the other side of the coin, I also realized there were a lot of situations and things that I was engaging in on a daily basis in my own life that I just wasn't happy with. And so it was literally the energetic weight of
mm,
me feeling unhappy, me carrying grief, me holding on to burdens from the past that I, for some reason, could not let go of at that time, but thought that I had. And when I went through the process, I went to therapy myself. I started doing a lot of self work. I started really analyzing what was going on in my mind, what I really wanted out of life, and where the incongruency was between where I was at then and what I was saying that I wanted and why I wasn't showing up that way. And as I started to work on those things, um, I just started feeling more energized. I started feeling happier. I felt lighter. And I just started showing up differently. So it was interesting because I kept saying, like, well, gosh, like I'm not eating anything that I know bothers me. I'm working
mm.
out, I'm sleeping pretty well. And it was just, I kept going back to those things like, what am I doing wrong? What am I missing? And the reality is it was everything going on inside that I was refusing to
Mm.
address, that was keeping me feeling less than my best. So that's an example of how I've seen that play out in my own life. And, similarly with clients, I've had clients before who are amazing women. They're dedicated to the process. They do all the right things and they get great results. And then let's say they're in a really high stress career and they finally make a decision and they're like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm going to make a pivot. They go to something they're more satisfied with and they drop 10 pounds like that. Like they're happier, they sleep better, their stress levels are significantly lower. And then that shows up in their physical manifestation of a body.
Yeah, I want to explore that a bit. Have you looked into the research on this? So we all understand that life stress can affect our energy expenditure directly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of just the way our body goes into a certain mode of preservation, and there's all the hormones and cortisol and everything else. I mean, what does the research say if you've looked at it in something like a massive, you said holding on to burdens you thought you let go, like that massive of a trauma you're sitting with that then all of a sudden is off your shoulders. How does that cause your expenditure to come back up?
Well, if you think about from like a psychological perspective, that is a form of a stress, which just not, this external, we think of stress as like my job or my relationship or my finances. But in reality, if that's what's going on in your mind at all times, that's signaling a stress response. So it's like if you're driving your car and I don't know if you've ever had this happen where you're driving at night and it's like, you're kind of tired and like you think you see an animal like run out and like across the road, but like nothing's actually there. And all of a sudden you're like, and you get that like hit of adrenaline and you're like jazzed and you're like, oh my God, but nothing was there, right? Like I thought that I saw something. So it's what we think and what we seek can have that physical reaction in the body. So I haven't spent a ton of time in the literature, but from my understanding and the education that I've gone through on the mind body subject, and then with stress response, psychological thoughts, emotions as well. Every time we have a thought that produces an emotion, we release a neuropeptide that creates a chemical reaction in the body. So that can either create stress within ourselves or it can help alleviate stress, which is, another reason why I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but like when you're in a new relationship or you're in a new job, something that you're really excited about, it's like your sleep can be like totally crap. Like you can be eating like junk food, but you still feel really good. You're like hyped on life. You're like, whatever, man.
It's
Like
true.
this is
Like,
great.
it's the
Yeah.
opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that what we go through internally, and even so, like our perception of what we go through, I think plays into how we feel like a significant amount.
That's good. Perception. Yeah, it's so true. Having good friends in your life, for example. I mean, there's a few relationships I've established through podcasting where we'll send each other videos and I'll get a video and they'll say something that just peps me up and motivates me. I'm like, the whatever happened that day almost doesn't matter because now all of a sudden you've got this fire in your brain and the energy that you didn't know where it came from. So you talked about perception, which I think of things like the fixed versus growth mindset, right? The constant curiosity, willingness to challenge ourselves, and then even mastering our behaviors by mastering our thoughts. Like again, it all comes down to framing. Talked about framing. So what is your view of, maybe we get philosophical here, of mindset as a concept? How do we take action to level up the mindset, as you say? Talk about that a little bit.
So how we take action to level up the mindset.
Yeah.
That's
Strategies.
a good question. Strategies. So again, I think it kind of depends on the person and what they're looking to level up in their mindset. Is it just having more self-awareness? Is it cultivating better self-talk? I mean, I'm just a huge advocate of self-awareness in the first place. I think that a lot of times when we can sit down and be realistic with ourselves and say like, and that's one of the hardest things for people. That was one of the hardest things for me, was to sit down and just be real. Like, we might think we're being truthful to everyone else, but like, are you telling yourself the truth? And so being able to have that hard conversation with ourselves, I think once that awareness comes up, a lot of times the cascade of changes starts to naturally occur once that awareness is on the forefront. I'm really big into strategies like meditation and visualization. Not everybody resonates with those things. I do, because I'm like, I need to sit down and have quiet and still time. And so for me, that's really big. Even things like gratitude, it sounds so cliche. I know that's everywhere now, practice gratitude, but it's really physically impossible to be like angry or to have negative emotions when you are genuinely feeling grateful for something.
Yes.
And so just kind of for me personally, taking myself back to those places, and acknowledging, again, when I'm having a day, let's say where My mindset is not so great, or I am, it's just one of those days where you're like, what else is going to happen? Acknowledging that whatever is going on in my head that is not productive is there for a reason. We always talk about too, in like the philosophical kind of woo-woo side of the world, they're always like, the ego death. I believe that the ego serves to protect us. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So when I feel my ego getting really like, you're not good enough, or who are you to do this? I stop for a second. I show gratitude for it. I say, thank you for trying to keep me safe, but we're good. We've got this. Like, our life is not in danger. So like, please sit over there and be quiet.
Yeah.
and when danger comes up, you can say something then. So, I think acknowledging different parts of yourself, going back to that self-acceptance and being grateful for those parts, but recognizing what's serving you and what isn't at any given time can be very helpful.
Okay, there's a lot there. So you did talk about no, there's a lot there. I'm trying to figure out which one to poke at. You talked about self-awareness. What came to my mind was emotional intelligence and how that's like the first part of self-awareness. This theme comes up all the time, and the more I know personally, the more uncomfortable I sit with who I am and what I do to people. Meaning, if I ask somebody for honest feedback, which we rarely do because it scares us what the answer is going to be. And 9 out of 10 people are saying like, you're awesome. And then that other person says, this one thing you did. And of course we focus on that. Right. But it does allow us to put a lens back on ourselves and maybe just get comfortable with who we are. I mean, you kind of said it, whether it's the self-reflection or the gratitude or journaling. Some people love that. And some people hate this stuff, and it's okay. Find the thing that works for you. We're getting deep here, but self-awareness, let's put that in a nutshell is kind of what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing I would say too is understanding the role that you play in any given situation. So I find it like funny if I had like a room full of women in front of me, and I just say women because I work with women, and I was like, if I asked them to raise their hands on like, who here is like a self-proclaimed control freak, like most of them would raise their hands. Like I would raise my hand. And so like, I feel like as humans, we have this desire to have control over all these things that happen, when in reality, the only thing we can control is how we respond to a situation and the responsibility that we take from a situation, regardless of if it's our fault or not. So something can happen to us that's not our fault, but it's our responsibility to decide what kind of meaning we're going to assign to that and then how we're going to move forward. And so few people actually put that into practice. So I just find this like irony of people wanting to be in control, but the one thing that actually gives them control over their circumstances, they refuse to do because it involves taking responsibility for a situation that oftentimes might not even be our fault. And maybe we don't like the situation. That's fine, but it's our responsibility to analyze that and figure out how we're going to move forward with it. And so that's another thing that like taking radical ownership for my life, even when I'm like, ew, what just happened? Like that's been a game changer because now I have the control to change it.
Yeah, imagine right this moment is a reset and you were just born into the world. Like you have all the control to do whatever happens next.
Yep.
Regardless of what happened in the past. Yeah, and that's a common theme we hear a lot, like with stoicism of whatever happened in the past, you can blame people, you can do whatever, it doesn't matter. You're responsible in the future. Right. And unfortunately, some people are in worse situations than others, but again, it doesn't matter. Start there and move forward.
Right.
Love it.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I'd like to give a big shout out to my nutrition coach, Philip. With his coaching, I have lost 17 pounds. He helped me identify the reason that I wanted to lose weight. And it's very simple, longevity. I want to be healthy, active, and independent until the day I die. He introduced me to this wonderful little app called Macro Factor. I got that part of my nutrition figured out. Along with that is the movement part of nutrition. There's a plan to it, and he really helped me with that. The other thing he helped me with was knowing that I need to get a lot of steps in. So the more steps you have, the higher your expenditure is, and the easier it is to lose weight. When it's presented to you like he presents it, it makes even more sense. And the other thing that he had was a hunger guide, and that really helped me. So thank you, Philip.
Okay, so get in a little more nuts and bolts on maybe the fat loss conundrum thing that you have here. I like that. I like words like conundrum.
I know that was good. I'm like, did I write that?
No, you did. That's like your theme, like everywhere. No, the fat loss conundrum, which is how hormones, gut health, and stress affect our metabolism. So you're right. You don't really explain what the conundrum is. So now I have you on the show to do that. To me, that means like it's the contradiction maybe between the improved health you get from losing fat and getting into a manageable, healthy weight, but also all the downregulation and potential damage, downregulation and adaptation that occurs from maybe excessive fat loss that you experience with the extremes, right? Of either being very unhealthy or being unhealthy in the other direction with the bodybuilding career. Is that what you mean? Or is there something completely different with that?
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
definitely part of
Yeah.
it. So I think that's a huge component, especially in the women's space, where the narrative oftentimes is just eat less, move more. Yes, there are many people out there that do need to eat less and move more. There are a lot of women who are maybe moving, maybe need to move more, but also need to eat more because
Right.
they have been told since they were children, young girls, eat less. Don't eat all your food when you go out for a date because, nobody wants to look like they're eating all their food. I was not that person. I was like, I will order seconds. Thank you. And so that is part of it, but also the role that things like hormones, gut health, your thyroid, stress, what that cortisol connection, how that actually impacts your metabolism and your ability to burn fat. So really, I think the conundrum there at a very high level for people is just understanding that all of these things affect your ability to lose fat. They affect your metabolism. Your metabolism's a dynamic thing, right? As you mentioned, metabolic adaptation. It adapts down, it adapts upward. It adapts to the inputs that it's receiving, which is an amazing thing from a survival perspective. But I see women a lot of times who don't think, I have clients all the time who will have signs and symptoms of some level of hormone imbalance. And I'm like, hey, maybe we should get your blood work done, or let's check this out. And most of them are receptive to it. But every now and then I'll have someone who's like, no, it's not a big deal. Or people downplay the role that their stress plays, let's say. They're like, well, I've been doing this for 12 weeks and I can't seem to lose fat and everything's on point, but oh my God, I run my own business. I work 80 hours a week and I'm a single mom and like my life is miserable. But no. I meditation, I don't need to do that. Or I don't need to delegate some stuff. It's fine. It's not that. So what should I do for nutrition?
Right. Tell me my macros, please, under the scenario.
My God, yes. Yes. Yeah. And I similarly, I've had people with like pretty severe gut issues that exactly, I'm like, we really need to visit this as a foundation first because your fat loss efforts are going to be much easier once we address these things. And again, yes, they're like, no, I've done that before. I need you to tell me what my macros are. I'm like, I will not do that. So
yeah,
it is that intersection, right? Like everything is integrated within the body and within the mind and the body. So I just think that people in general need to learn that even though in a Western setting, we segment different systems of the body or different parts of the body for ease of teaching or for ease of treating in a Western setting. But the reality is that when something is dysfunctional in one system or in one organ, it's going to have downstream effects that are going to affect other things. So if you have 5 different things going on, regardless of where it started, they're all interconnected in some sense. And if your goal is fat loss and you have dysfunction in these different areas, your fat loss efforts, if they happen, are going to happen with much more restriction. It's going to be a lot harder. You're not going to enjoy the process. It's not going to be as easy as it could otherwise be.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you take clients through some sort of pre-diet maintenance or prep or whatever phase we call it to try to at least regulate or normalize these as best as possible.
100%. If I see that there's dysfunction first, every now and then I get someone that comes in and they already have a really good base and we can just kind of hit the ground running. But yeah, it's addressing gut dysfunction. It is addressing, do we need to spend time balancing hormones? Do we need to feed you up so that you're not living on, 1,000 calories a day and I have to go into a cut at 600 calories, which I would never do because I would never do that myself. And and the unfortunate thing is that it's not sexy for a lot of people, right? Like they want to come in and they want that like, well, Susie on Instagram told me I could like lose 12 pounds of fat in 8 weeks. And I'm like, that's because Susie's just selling you a standard program and she's not looking at any of this. So the reality is that it's probably going to take longer because we really need to fix this first. And I'm very transparent with clients that like, I will not run your body into the ground for the sake of you achieving an aesthetic goal. So if you can't spend time being in this phase, I just call it a health first phase, right? We're just building your foundation and then we're going to build your house. And if you can't build the foundation, then don't expect to have a nice house.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and I guess on the other side, it's really satisfying when someone says, well, this one small tweak, having some electrolytes or, starting a probiotic or just getting that extra half hour of sleep, all of a sudden everything started to move, everything's just better.
100%.
So let's talk gut health, right? Because I think it's still a misunderstood topic. It's one of those I'll say newer topics that are being explored where we actually don't understand a lot about it, from the evidence, and there's a lot of research going on. So how can we, even if we don't know it all, right, we could at least have practical strategies for dealing with it, improving our digestion, improving our microbiota. How would you summarize this whole thing in maybe the top 2 or 3 high impact actions people can take?
So without having any background, so I know everybody listening is going to be like, well, I have bloating, or I get some gas, or, whatever it is, but without knowing any of those things. And I've had clients where we've been on extensive gut protocols, and I can tell you those things they have a time and place if needed. But what makes the most impact for so many people is not eating not eating while you're on the run, sitting down, like trying to recenter yourself, shifting into a parasympathetic state, taking some deep breaths before you eat, which I know for a lot of people, if you own a business, if you work full time and you're in meetings all day, that can be really difficult. But just not eating when your body is in some sort of stressed out or sympathetic state can be wondrous for your digestive tract, because when you are go, 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 and you're in a sympathetic state, your body is not prioritizing digestion, because in its mind, it thinks that we are fighting against a stressor, whatever that means. And so I think for people, something like that can be really impactful, and along the lines of sitting down and slowing down to eat your food, chewing your food thoroughly, not inhaling, taking like 3 bites and then being like, oh, gotta swallow that one. You also have a more pleasurable eating experience when you actually sit down, calm down, take the time, taste your food, savor the sensations. And that can help prevent overeating as well when you actually slow down and you take the time to enjoy your food, and it's better for digestion. So people are always like, yeah, digestion begins, in the gut or in the stomach. And it's like, no. And then you have people who are like, digestion begins in the mouth because we secrete enzymes in our saliva. And it's like, no, it actually doesn't. It begins in the mind, right? Like, have you ever been
Yes.
like late at night, you're like sitting on the couch and like a Wendy's commercial comes up, which is like, I've not had Wendy's in probably 8 years, but every now and then they get me and I'm like, oh my God, that kind of looks good right now. And your water, or your mouth starts to water, or, you go into a bakery,
Right. The
and
close
there's
up of the juicy burger and all that.
exactly. Yeah. So it's just that visual right then is producing saliva, which has enzymes, kickstarting what your body thinks to be the digestive process based on the input that you're giving it from what you're seeing. So it begins in the mind. So sitting down, looking at your food, giving yourself a second, that can be really impactful for gut health. And then doing more low impact activity like walking, especially after meals, super beneficial, not just for stabilizing blood sugar, but for helping your body with digestion. So I can tell you, I've had clients on, I've done a whole 4-hour, 5-hour protocol with them. We've gone super deep. We've done a GI map. We know what's going on, what pathogens are in there. And it's like, what has had the most profound effect was eating in a parasympathetic state, chewing their food more, going for walks after meals, slowing down, those things. So without, if anyone who's listening that feels like you have gut issues, without doing a deep dive into what you have, just start there. And I guarantee you'll make some progress of some sort.
Oh, love it. This is really good because I want to dissect both of them, but the general idea that a lot of these things we think are big problems that have to be dissected to the nth degree often have a big, simple solution that we're just not doing or refusing to do or not aware that we need to do, right? All of the above.
Yep.
I can be easily accused often of just rushing through the kitchen, grabbing whatever I need to grab and trying to eat it because I've got a million things to do. And like you said, mindfulness is a potential cure to digestive issues, which we talk about mindful eating all the time, but it's like always this woo-woo thing of, I don't even know how it's justified. Usually it's in the context of you're going to eat less or something like that. Right. And for digestion, which a lot of people experience, I love that. The walking, would you say so I like walking too. I talk about it all the time, like walk as much as you can, walk before meals, after meals, like pacing around the house when you're on the phone.
Yep.
Is it after a meal, before a meal? When's the best time to walk when we're talking about digestion, if there is?
So I've not actually seen, and there could be research on walking before meals. I haven't actually taken a look to dive into that, but there's a lot on walking postprandial, so after your meal, to help with the digestive process and to help with blood sugar. So if you're eating something and it's causing a blood sugar spike, going for a walk can help kind of stabilize that as well. And so all the research I've seen, partially because that's what I've sought out, is after post meal, like 15, 20 minutes, nothing super intense. You don't need to go for a power walk. just a nice leisurely walk down the
Right.
street, around your house, whatever.
Yeah, and Brandon DeCruz is a big fan of like talking about that with comparing it to metformin, the type 2
Mhm.
diabetes drug, and this whole high flux lifestyle. Does is there is there a correlation between blood sugar then and digestion? I'm asking these
These are
deep
great
questions.
questions. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
just so everyone knows, as of the time we're recording this, it's Friday, so my brain is like on
No, I
firing on
don't mean to
half
put you on the
cylinders.
spot
I'm
because
sure
I
there
don't know
is.
either.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to think
Yeah.
back if I've seen anything, but again, it's not something that I've purposely sought out. But I think that
Yeah.
might be a takeaway from.
Yeah, we should look that up.
But we should
Yeah.
look that up and then
We'll
come
both
back for
we'll
round
help each other
2.
out. We'll look it up. There we go.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. So, all right. So stress, you mentioned stress as the
Mhm.
other piece of this, besides hormones, stress management. And my question was going to be like your practices for effectively managing stress. And now that we've talked a lot about it, you know, you talked about the different, I guess, layers of life stress. There's the really deep stuff that's just sitting with you for
Mhm.
years. Then there's the situational stress, like you have a job, a family, and so on. And I always like to tell people, like, there's certain things you can't control and certain things you can, but there's probably things you think you can't that you can. Like you
Mhm.
can change your job, you can move. There are big decisions and big changes. But if something is so chronic that it's just beating you down, and this is your health, think about it, right? Well, I mean,
Right.
what are your thoughts on all these different layers of stress and then just managing stress in a doable way for people?
100%. I mean, I think all of the layers of stress are very valid. And again, depending on the person, I think starting with what might be something that's
Mhm.
manageable for them, right? Um, and I think, talking about stress, we can also look at internal stressors as well, things like inflammation, things like
Mhm.
having type 2 diabetes and having blood sugar that's off the charts. Like that is a form of stress to the body. So you can manage a lot of stress from an internal perspective with the proper changes to nutrition, exercise, lifestyle, things like that. But for those other things, the relationships, the jobs, the trauma and the emotions potentially that we're carrying from the past, I think they all play a role. And I think at some point they all need to be addressed. However, I think with anything personally, a plan or whatever route forward has to be feasible in some sense for somebody. So it doesn't matter if it's exercise, nutrition, stress management. If I give you the best plan in the world, but you can't at least effectively execute some of it, then it doesn't matter how good the plan is. So I really, when I work with people, I really try to take an individualized approach. So I have a client right now who unfortunately her mother has cancer and she is a caregiver. And so that's actually something we're actively working on right now is, okay, we might not be able to control, um, what is going on with our mom. And we have to show up at various times to be that support. But what can we control? We can control our self-talk. We can control the foods we can consume. We can control our bedtime most of the time. When we have extra time, we can control, are we including movement? What are we doing? So I think stress management looks different for different people at different stages in
Mhm.
life. And it just has to be something that's feasible. So for instance, like I mentioned, I love meditating. I love sitting in stillness because my days can feel kind of scattered and crazy and a lot of interacting. And sometimes I need that to recharge. So for me, that's a form of stress management. Going for a walk, that can be another form of
Yeah.
stress management. And so I think for people, finding something that feels good to them and that can look different, and that might look different for you at different stages of life as well. But I do think, like you mentioned, there are a lot of things that we think are out of our control that they're not, but they are big decisions. And sometimes we don't want to face those things. And when I work with clients, I try again. I see my role a lot of times is just bringing up the self-awareness and then helping clients choose which path we're going to take. Now it's up to them to decide if that's what they want to do. I would never
For
tell
sure.
somebody you should quit your job, even though sometimes I
Right.
want to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just to bring up the fact that, like, wow, like I never realized that a lot of my stress actually is stemming from my job. Is there something else I can do instead? Let's explore that. And so I think that, again, going back to that self ownership and taking responsibility for what's going on in our lives gives
Mhm.
us a lot more power to change it. But I do think that all of those stressors need to be addressed. But it's like anything, right? Like if there's 10 stressors, once we
Yeah.
start peeling it layer by layer, we might find that the other things aren't having as much impact on
Oh,
us
for
when we
sure.
don't have that pile stacking on top of it.
Yeah, that's so true. There's like there's a threshold, and
Right.
it's just does you in.
Yeah.
It's so funny. A client asked the other day, like, he's like, I have some extra free time. What can I do to just de-stress? And I'm like, ask yourself the question, like, what have I really loved to do that I haven't done in a while,
Yes.
and that you just think back to, it just gave you so much joy and made me forget everything. Like, it could be simple things. I love doing karaoke with my daughters now at night sometimes before they go to bed. And it's just like, my brain is into the music and dancing with them and just like sharing the microphone, and like not everything goes away. Right. What is that for you if you're listening, and like you said, we have to help you choose what it is. Your
Mhm.
coach or somebody else is not going to tell you what that is,
Right.
but the self-awareness is where it's at. Cool.
Absolutely. That's actually a question I ask in my intake form is what is something you used to do either as a
Oh,
child or
nice.
just in general that you don't do anymore because, adult responsibilities. And like oftentimes that's a homework item. It's like take 1 hour and if it's feasible, go do it. Like I started doing adult gymnastics about 5 months ago because I love trampolines and I love doing backflips and it brings me a ton of joy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I need to start playing my saxophone again. I used to play jazz, and for years, that's how I met my wife.
That's
And
amazing.
my kids are now playing instruments, and they don't see me play. And I'm like, that's a missed opportunity for all of us. So there you go. Maybe that's what I'm going to commit to now.
That's your homework for the week.
That's my homework. Cool. All right. I want to touch on, you have some time, right? A little
Mhm.
time? All right.
Yeah.
The body positivity. Let's get into that very non-controversial topic for a bit. Okay. And when we talk about this health-centric approach to wellness and balancing, we talked about acceptance and self-love and then striving for more, and even striving for a lot more. It depends on what that is to you, but it could be in your case, in that period of life where you strove for a physique, a certain physique, right? And it could be somebody trying to be super strong and compete or whatever. Maybe we've already touched this, but how do you how do you help clients overcome that negative body image, that self-criticism? Did we already? I guess we already covered this a little bit, right,
We can
Allie?
talk about
Yeah,
it a little more.
yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, first starting with what is the dialogue first off and where is it coming from? Is that genuinely what you believe about yourself? Is that what you were told growing up? Does this stem from like I didn't receive enough love as a child, so I feel like I have to look or present a certain way in order to get that? So helping clients kind of dissect where that's coming from for me helps shift my strategy. I mean, I've had clients go through exercises where I have them stand in front of a mirror, and they just let whatever thoughts come up naturally about their body. And if it's like, I hate my midsection, I
Mm.
have them actually spend time focusing and setting an intention to shift the narrative around their midsection. And so, it just kind of depends on the person.
Oh,
Um,
wait. How do you do that? So if they said, I hate my midsection, what's the
Oh,
shift?
yeah. So this is them actually in the exercise. So
Mhm.
I let them do this on their own. I'm like, you
Sure.
don't have to share it unless you feel comfortable. But
Yeah.
I actually have them repeat affirmations to themselves and it's not, I love my midsection, right? Because if we hate something, then we try to pretend like we love it. Like our
Oh, it's
mind's
just
like,
fake. Yeah.
right, like
Mm.
you lie. But again, just going back to that acceptance, starting to say, I accept you as you are.
Mhm.
I'm working to change you, but I accept you as you are now. So just
Mm.
focusing on that acceptance. Also helping clients shift the focus to what their body is doing for them and can do for them. So it sounds so silly, but one of the most profound moments for me in my journey of this body positivity or self love, acceptance, whatever you want to call it. So I was sitting on my couch one day. I think I'd had like a glass or two of wine. I like a nice wine every now and then.
Me
And I was
too. Don't,
good,
no guilt over
good.
it. Wine's
Like
delicious. Yeah.
wine at a jazz concert, that actually sounds really nice.
Oh,
So,
there you go.
um, but yeah, I was thinking about just from a cellular perspective, how our body is constantly just trying to keep us in homeostasis. And it was
Mm.
like, it felt so silly, but I had this light bulb moment of like, wow, every time I do something, whether it's have a glass of wine or eat something that I know is not really health promoting, my body is working 24/7 for the duration of my entire life to basically take the things that I do that aren't conducive to my health and bring me back into that homeostasis so I can
Mm.
be healthy. And I was like, holy cow, like if that is not love, I don't know what is, right? Like how many of us, you as a parent, right? You show up for your kids day in and day out because you love them. Our bodies are doing this for us our entire lives, no matter how we talk to it, no matter how we look at it, no matter what kind of trash
Mm.
we expose ourselves to, it's constantly showing up for us to make us healthy. And I was like, literally on my couch, like, I'm not crying, you're crying. Like it was just such a beautiful moment of like, wow, we live in this vessel that is just, it's constantly working for us, even when we have symptoms that don't feel good. And we think like, I hear that narrative all the time, like my body hates me or my body's
Right.
doing this. It doesn't. And so
No.
just shifting the narrative around that and realizing that no matter what you're going through, your body is always trying to work in your favor. We just need to help it along that
Ah,
process.
that's so good. I'm imagining like I'm visual here, imagining like a line, a spectrum, right, where there's the equilibrium in the middle, and your body is already always trying to get you back there, and we, make choices that push it away and push it away and push it away, and it's trying to get with
Mhm.
it. We give it a help, right? We accept that that's what it's trying to do, and if the result is not what you want, then there's something else in our control that we might have to go after. This is a great way to look at it,
Thank
Allie. I
you.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And if you
Love
think
that.
about it as like a friend or a loved one, like
Yeah.
if your loved one was constantly trying to help you and bring you back and you were like, "Oh, you're ugly and fat and I don't like you." Like when you think about it like that, you're like, I would never speak to, a person I love like that. And so
Yeah.
for me, that was just really a really big mindset shift. And so I try to help clients with that. And then, the last thing that is really, I feel like a missing component for clients is helping them focus on performance, right? So I feel
Yes.
like every single one of my clients right now wants to be able to do pull-ups, which I think is amazing
Oh
because
yeah.
as a kid, I couldn't do pull-ups. So when I finally could do pull-ups, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And so focusing on like, yes, we're working on our fat loss goals, right? But let's focus on like feeling badass in our bodies. Like, cause that's
Huge.
what's really cool, honestly, at the end of the day.
That's huge. So speaking of that, I actually wanted to ask you about a specific scenario. Do you work with teenage girls, like
I,
15,
d-
16, 17?
I don't specialize in that. I
Okay.
do. I don't have
Yeah.
any on my roster right now.
Because I'm just curious about your thought about that. If you had like, let's say a 16-year-old who's an average body weight, right? Lean, whatever you want to call it. And she comes with you wanting to improve her physique. And we don't have any trauma going on, right?
Right.
Or disorders going on. What approach would you take? Would it be a performance based approach, a habit based approach? Where you're not really focused so much on the things that maybe an adult could
Right.
handle, let's say? Yeah.
I would probably take a mix of those approach.
Yeah.
I would work on habits for sure, just because I don't think kids or teenagers,
Yeah.
unless you have a great parental like example, they're not taught healthy habits. So I think just from the purpose of carrying them into adulthood with good habits,
Mhm.
is something instrumental. And I was not the best, but that's one thing I learned in sports and athletics that I'm just so grateful for. So I think I would focus on that, but I think I would focus more on performance. And the great thing with someone who's 15, 16, 17, right? Like, I could give them a workout plan, let's say, that's going to give them a physique that they want, and I could make it about performance, and they're still going to get the physique they want because their bodies are like so resilient and so
Yeah.
adaptive.
Yeah. True.
But from like the mental perspective, I wouldn't be focusing on like, yeah, girl, like let's get you sexy and shredded. Like I would never,
Right.
I don't really talk like that anyway, but that would never be my verbiage with someone
Yeah.
who is
It's like
still in.
let's have fun instead. Here's your
Right,
training program. Yeah.
right, let's
Yeah.
have fun, let's feel strong, like,
Yeah.
yes, if that was their goal, that would be baked into it, but that wouldn't be the way I present it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So I would very much be let's have like, what's something that your friends can't do that you wanna be able to
Yeah. Yeah.
do,
Yeah. There
right?
you
Like,
go.
how can you be like the one in the group who, you guys go to the club and, like, those guys over there are afraid to come talk to you guys because you're like you look like you'd whoop some ass or something, like, what can we
Yeah.
do to
For
make you feel
sure.
like that? So
Love that. Okay. Yeah, no, I was just curious. So you do have this mission to help women live fully alive. And again, the image, something that comes to my mind is like the fog being lifted, having this vitality, this
mhm.
energy, this mental clarity. What does that concept mean to you? Because we didn't really touch on that phraseology that you use. And how
Yes.
do you measure the impact on someone who isn't fully alive and you want to get them there?
Absolutely. So for me, it's about whatever your ideal life looks like. How can we get you there using the tools of nutrition, fitness, lifestyle? And oftentimes, like, I like to connect clients with other resources that they need to get to that point, even if it's another person, if it's just helping them with a different life transition. So where that stems from, that phrase, when my mom passed, she had just turned 60 years old. She had worked her entire life. She was kind of the breadwinner for much of my life from my parents. My dad had some health issues, and so he wasn't able to work from the time I was like 10 years old. until he passed in 2020. And so my mom was like the one who kind of took care of everything. She was probably one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. But she was so great. She never really asked for help. And she was just such a, that kind of image of like a really strong woman. Now, I think a whole other topic for another podcast could be the detriment of that, right? Of not asking for help. However, she had this vision of when she retired, which she was only a few years from, that her and my dad, they had a cabin in northern Arizona in the mountains. They were living in Phoenix at the time when she was sick. And she had this vision of, we're going to retire. We're going to go spend time in the mountains. We're going to travel. We're going to spend time with, my sister has 3 boys, and then my oldest sister has a daughter. So we're going to go travel to Atlanta and spend time with the grandkids and this and that. And she never got to do that. She started feeling bad one day, went to the hospital, and basically got told, you have 18 months max to live. And so I realized from that situation that we can't live life afraid of when we're going to die. But the reality is that we never know when that's going to happen. So I try to check in with myself and ask myself, if I found out that I was going to die in 6 months, would I be happy and content with the way that I've been living my life so far? And can I look back and say, wow, like maybe I didn't get to do every single thing that I wanted, but I have no regrets. And I have been like fully present in this life for the time that I've given. And I see so many people, women and men alike, who cruise through their day like zombies because they're unhappy with what they're doing. They feel like crap. They wake up on Monday and they cannot wait for it to be Friday afternoon so they can live for those 2 days that they don't have to go to work. They don't have to do anything. They can sit around, eat, drink, do whatever they want. And I just think it's so sad. I can't imagine living that way and looking back when I'm 80 and thinking, holy cow, I've been here for 80 years and that's what I've been doing for most of it. So when I am helping women, yes, it's about getting healthier. Yes, it's about, conquering their fitness goals, whatever that means to them. But the reality is if what we're doing isn't serving to make you better so you can live this freaking epic life, whatever that means to you, even if that means like, I just want more time and energy to spend with my kids, with my family. Like, I love the job that I'm at. Awesome. Like, let's keep doing it. That's my goal, right? Because I want people to look back when they're 80 and think like, damn, this has been a good ride. Like, I feel good about this. Not, wow, I was given this chance and I didn't make the most of it. I think that's like the saddest thing ever. It like breaks my heart thinking about it.
So good, Allie. So, I mean, people who are listening, this is not about a physical transformation, right? This is not about changing something in the short term. This is like, if you were going to die in less than 2 years, have you done what you want to do? And then even longer than that, would you like to live, if you're going to live for many years, how do you want to thrive doing that? Yeah, really good, Allie. Okay. So here's the second to last question I like to ask all guests. I don't know if you're prepared for it or not, but
probably not. Hit me.
What one question did you wish I had asked, and what is your answer?
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. I'm never someone that I don't really like enter into anything with any kind of expectation. So I did not have any questions that you didn't ask. But you didn't ask me well, I guess I already answered it. You didn't ask me what my thing that brings me joy that I used to do that I don't is.
Okay.
But I went ahead and answered it. I was like, whatever, I'll ask myself. And that was the doing adult gymnastics. I also love hiking. I love being in nature. I will already have my camper van when this releases. I'm sure I'm in the process of getting a camper van right now. So I'm going to do some traveling in that, which is very exciting. So yeah, I love exploring. I love seeing new things, trying new things.
Positive way to end. And anyone listening, like, think about the same thing for you. What brings you joy? Okay, Allie. So where can listeners learn more about you and your work?
Yes. So I am on Instagram at Allie Cass Health, or you can visit my website, www.alliecasshealth.com. You can read more about me, my program, and if you'd like to connect, I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. So I will include your Instagram and website in the show notes so listeners can find you. And Allie, thank you so much for bringing the fire and the energy today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
It was awesome.